Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the opportunity to speak in the debate on this bill, although I have to say to the lone minister sitting on the front bench that I do not welcome this bill. I fully understand and indeed share the government's desire to uphold the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. I understand and share the desire to keep the union of the United Kingdom. I recognise the frustration and difficulty when the Northern Ireland Assembly and Executive are not in place and operating. And I also share the government's desire to get that Assembly and Executive back operating for the good of the people of Northern Ireland. But I do not believe that this bill is the way to achieve those aims. In thinking about this bill, I actually started off by asking myself three questions. First of all, do I consider this to be legal under international law? Second, will it achieve its aims? And third, does it at least maintain the standing of the United Kingdom in the eyes of the world? And my answer to all three of those questions is no. And that is even before we look at the extraordinarily sweeping powers that this bill would give to ministers. Now, the government's claim of legality, as we have heard, is based on the doctrine of necessity in international law. The government, as the Foreign Secretary said, has indeed published a legal position. And that describes this term necessity in the following way. The term necessity is used in international law to lawfully justify situations where the only way a state can safeguard an essential interest is the non-performance of another international obligation. The action taken may not seriously impair the essential interests of the other state and cannot be claimed where excluded by the relevant obligation, or where the state invoking it has contributed to the situation of necessity. So let's examine this. First of all, it is claimed that it is the only way. If the necessity argument is to hold, this must be the only way to achieve the government's desires. Yet the government's legal position paper itself accepts there are other ways. For example, it says the government's preference remains a negotiated outcome, which indeed was reiterated by the Foreign Secretary in her opening speech in this debate. It also acknowledges that there's another potential way to deal with this issue in the existence of Article 16. So the government's preferred option is negotiation, and then there's a second option, which is Article 16. Now, Article 16 is referred to in the legal position paper, but when I read it, I thought it was referred to in a way which seemed to try to say that the existence of Article 16 somehow justifies the introduction of this bill. Article 16 does not justify this bill. The very existence of Article 16 negates the legal justification for this bill. So let's also examine some of the other arguments for invoking the necessity defence. That defence cannot be claimed where the state invoking it has contributed to the situation of necessity. And again, in their legal position paper, the government sets out its argument that the peril that has emerged was not inherent in the protocol's provisions. I have to say to the Minister that I find that a most extraordinary statement. The peril is a direct result of the border down the Irish Sea, which was an integral and inherent part of the protocol which the government signed in the withdrawal agreement. Now, it is possible, of course, that the government might say, oh, well, we knew about that, but we didn't think the DUP would react in the way that they have. Well, I say to the Minister, they should have listened to the DUP in the many debates that went on the withdrawal agreement, because they made their position on the protocol very clear at that point, and it was not positive. So, finally, necessity suggests urgency. Imminent peril is the other phrase, the phrase that is used. There is nothing urgent about this bill. It has not been introduced as emergency legislation. It's likely to take not weeks but months to get through Parliament. And as the former Treasury Solicitor Sir Jonathan Jones said in the House magazine, if the UK really did face imminent peril, you might think the government would need to deal with it more quickly than that. So my answer to all those, the question is whether it is legal under international law, is for all the above reasons, no, it is not. So question 2, will it achieve its aims? Now, I'm assuming that the aims are either to encourage the DUP into the Northern Ireland Executive, or it's a negotiating tool to bring the EU back round the table. On the first of these, so far I have seen no absolute commitment from the DUP that the executive will be up and running as a result of this bill. There were rumours at one stage that at second reading that might happen. Well, as far as I can see, it has not happened. I have to say to the Minister that if my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, wants to have a discussion with me about negotiations with other parties in this House on various matters, I'm very happy to do so. But if the bill is a negotiating tool, will it actually bring the EU back round the table? Well, so far we've seen no sign of that. And can I just say that actually my experience was that the EU looked very carefully at the political situation in any country. As I discovered after I had faced a no-confidence vote, despite having won that no-confidence vote, they then start to ask themselves, well, is it really worth negotiating with these people in government? Because will they actually be there in any period of time, regardless of the justification or not for them taking that view? But also, actually, I suspect they are saying to themselves, why should they negotiate in detail with a government that shows itself willing to sign an agreement, claim it as a victory, and then try to tear part of it up in less than 3 years' time? So my answer to the second question as to whether this bill will achieve its aims is that no, it will not. My final question is about the UK's standing in the world. The UK's standing in the world, our ability to convene and encourage others in the defence of our shared values, depends on the respect others have for us as a country that keeps its word and displays those shared values in its actions. As a patriot, I would not want to do anything that would diminish this country in the eyes of the world. I have to say to the government, this bill is not, in my view, legal in international law. It will not achieve its aims, and it will diminish the standing of the United Kingdom in the eyes of the world, and I cannot support it.
I'm very grateful to the backbench speakers so far who have been very considerate of others in the length of their speeches. But I will, after